Let's get going. All right, so welcome everyone to this webinar titled Tools and Workflows for Fire Sprinkler Design in Revit MEP. My name's Brendan Upton. I'm one of the technical consultants here at A2K, and my area is predominantly in the Revit MEP space. Okay. So just a bit of an agenda of what we'll be going through today. Before I go through that, though, actually, just quickly, if you guys have got any questions while we go through, or while I'm going through this webinar, feel free to type into the comments or the questions area on the control panel there, and I'll try and make some time. Try and make sure I make some time at the end to answer your questions there, and we'll see how we go. All right, so just a bit about of an agenda here. We'll just have a short introduction of who we are, who A2K is at the beginning, and then we're going to work through some of these tools and workflows predominantly for, or specifically I should say, for fire sprinkler design. So layout of distribution systems, a few tips and tricks there on sprinkler pipe types and pipe routing preferences, and just touch on a bit about the automatic pipe layout. So this webinar is probably geared more towards your beginner to intermediate type of user. So we'll sort of cover a few of the tools in the automatic layout of pipes. Then we'll go on to sizing sprinkler pipe work, and we'll look at sprinkler pipe sizing, and we'll also have a look at a tool that you may not be aware of called show disconnects that can be used when you're working with pipe types and pipe systems in Revit MEP. And then lastly, we're going to have a bit of a look at sprinkler head layout and sprinklers families. Okay, so sprinkler types and placing those sprinklers, and a few hints and tricks on how you can array and align sprinklers and lay them out to code requirements, or at least use the tools there that will help you. Some people out there might be of the opinion that some of the tools for fire, specifically for fire design and Revit MEP, might be a bit lacking in the out-of-the-box software and some of the tools themselves. So hopefully this webinar can sort of show you on a few tools that you may not be aware of, and a few ways that you can work with pipes and sprinklers that you may not be aware of, and you can pick them up and take them away into your own workflows. So just a quick little summary just about A2K. So we are a solutions training, consulting and management firm, and we specialise in the design technology area. So we've got over 150 staff across Australasia, and that makes us Australasia's largest Autodesk channel partner. And we are servicing in the areas of infrastructure, building, mining, construction and manufacturing sectors. So just a little bit about our technical experts behind the scenes here at A2K. So just a few facts here. I'm not going to read through all this, but you can see we've got a team of 35 technical experts, which makes us pretty large and pretty diverse across all of the tool sets and all of the softwares that we provide and support. Our technical experts average about 15 years of industry experience, so we've pretty much all got industry experience behind us, which helps when we're servicing and supporting you guys in training and whatnot. And as you can see, we cover not just Australia, but we're across over into New Zealand and as well. So we've got experts, and that we can work in those areas. So just a bit of information that might be more geared towards you guys, just about what we can offer as far as technical expertise on the MEP and the Revit MEP side of things. So we can offer fundamental courses, getting started with Revit MEP. We can offer advanced courses as well, and customized courses specific to your needs. We also are involved, A2K, in BIM MEP Oz, in the BIM MEP Oz initiative. So some of you there might have heard of BIM MEP Oz. So that is basically, from our side of things, from the technical side, is a Revit template and manufacturer content. In other words, Revit family MEP content that can be used. So you can subscribe to the BIM MEP Oz initiative, and you can download those Revit templates that we've helped to create, and the manufactured content which we're continuously updating and adding to. So the library's growing every month, and I'll talk a bit more about that at the end of this webinar. We'll have a bit of a look at the what's in the BIM MEP Oz, and specifically what could be of benefit to you who, for fire design and fire services. So we can offer intelligent modelling and BIM-focused modelling. We can do customised Revit training. We can help you set up your Revit templates and help you implement Revit into your companies and all that type of assistance. We also have consulting. We can work on longer-term consulting type projects and assisting you guys. We can do health checks and QA sessions as well. All right, so that's a bit about us. So now let's just jump into the webinar. So I'm going to jump into Revit here. Okay. All right, so the first thing I wanted to look at and show you was just a little bit about sprinkler pipe types and the layout of these distribution systems, and just explain for you that you guys there that perhaps don't know exactly how the pipe types are working and how you can actually better use the tools in there, and where the settings come from, where the sizes come from, etc. Okay, so I've just got a bit of a sample model here open. Not much going on at the moment. There's a few sprinkler heads there, but if I come up to the systems, let's just have a systems tab of the ribbon. Let's just have a look at the some of the pipe types that are in here and a bit about how they're made up. So I'm going to pick the carbon steel threaded pipe type here, and I'm going to choose an offset just of, let's say, 2700. I'm just going to draw myself a bit of pipe here, and then we can interrogate the properties and parameters of pipes and see how that works. So I'll put in a segment there. I'll up the diameter just so it puts in a bit of a transition, and then we can interrogate the materials and the sizes. Okay, so what I wanted to just demonstrate here was where the settings for pipes actually come from, and where you guys can actually manipulate these settings and customize them for your own requirements and for your project needs, etc. Okay, so a pipe type, if it is set up correctly, will start to place in these particular fittings. Okay, so for example, elbows, reducers for pipe transitions, and etc. Okay, so let's just have a look at the properties of the pipe here. So we'll come back to the routing preferences in a sec. First thing I wanted to just show you was the actual segments and sizes. Okay, so if I click on a segment of pipe here, I can see in the properties box that at the moment this is set as a system type of fire protection wet. But not only that, there is a pipe segment here and a material, etc. So it's set to steel carbon. It's coming from a EN schedule, and their material set to steel carbon. Okay, so I just want to show you where that is actually coming from, where you can actually create your own and manipulate these and change these settings around. Okay. The other thing I want to show you at the same time is where these actual sizes are coming from, in case you're not aware where these actual sizes are coming from. Because as you probably are aware, if I try and draw a pipe here, so I'll say create similar. If I try and put in a rudimentary number like 42, for example, off this list, you can see that it defaults back to 40 there. Okay, it's not letting me put any number. I can only pick from this specified list of sizes. Okay, this is how Revit MEP controls and keeps a user to a sizing schedule, so the pipe can only be modelled to the sizes that can obviously be built, manufactured. Okay, so where are they sort of coming from as well? Okay, so let's interrogate those settings now. So if we come up to the Manage tab and I go to MEP settings, I'm going to click on mechanical settings here, and I'm going to come down on the left hand side here to pipe settings, and I'm going to click on segments and sizes. Okay, so this is the first sort of point of call here when we're talking about the segments, materials, and the sizing catalogs here. This is where it's all controlled from this area here. Okay, so you can see that these are all the predefined materials types that are set up here. And if I scroll down the list, you can see that we've got these carbon steel schedules, which that pipe type was going by. Okay, so if I select one of these, and I'll show you that again. So cancel out of that. I select that pipe. Okay, that pipe segment is steel carbon EN 10255. Okay, so if I come up to manage and go back into mechanical settings, segment and sizes, you can see that we've got the steel carbon EN 10255. So this is where those sizes are now specified. So when I click on that pipe and work within the project and I get the diameter pull down menu, those sizes are coming from here, and that's where they're specified. So you guys are free to create your own pipes, and we're going to have a look at creating a pipe from scratch in a sec, but you can create your own custom pipes and create your own materials, or choose from the pull down list. And then you can also add or remove to the sizes here as well, to the size list, and they'll automatically adjust. So if I add a new size here, I can say 180, and I'll just make the inside diameter and the outside diameter the same just for the moment. But you can see it'll place that and it'll put it in order on the list. Okay, so you can create your pipe types and set up your sizes like so. Okay, so that's MEP settings, mechanical settings, and then under the pipe settings, it's segments and sizes. You can also get to that location if you click on the pipe type and you edit the type. Okay, and we have a look at the routing preferences now. If I click into the routing preferences, you can see that at the top of this dialog box, I've got the segments and sizes button there. That's going to take me to that exact same dialog box that we were just in under the mechanical settings. Okay, so just another way of getting to those settings there. Okay, it's the same. Just keep in mind it's the same dialog box. All right, so let's have a look at these routing preferences now. Okay, so you can see similar to ductwork and conduit and cable tray in Revit MEP, the pipework has what's referred to as these routing preferences, okay? And inside the routing preferences for each pipe type, you set the not only the pipe segment, so the bit of straight that's going to be used, but also you set the fittings in here as well, okay? So what fittings are going to be used for this pipe type as you're modelling it and turning, 90 degrees and rising up and teeing out from a straight segment, okay? Which fittings it's going to use, all right? Okay, so what I want to just show you here, just for those of you that don't know how to set up a pipe type, I'm going to just quickly show you how you can set one up from scratch, all right? So let's edit that pipe type again. I'm going to click the duplicate. Actually, I'll set that to standard first. So let's set that to standard. So we're just starting from a generic, non-specific type that we'll have to build from. So I'll click on standard. I'll click duplicate. It's now going to ask me what name I want to create or have for this pipe type. So I'm going to put a label of FP for fire protection, and then I'll put steel threaded, just for this example, and I'll click OK to that. That has now created me a new pipe type here in my list. I'm now free to go down to the routing preferences here and actually build up my pipe type with the fittings that I require here, and not just these generic generic standard ones. Okay. So what I want to do is change a pipe segment first. Okay, so what you can do is you can click inside of these cells and you'll notice that you get a little pull down menu and you can change the pipe types here. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll change that to that steel carbon setting there, that same one as the last pipe type. And what I want to do is now go through these fittings and change them to the applicable ones. So for me, I want them to be the threaded ones here. So I'm going to go through and choose the threaded pipe there, or the threaded elbow I should say, type. Okay, and now this is how you can actually set up your pipe types. Okay, so if you've got some fittings that you've customized, they have to be loaded, and you want to use those fittings in a pipe type you're creating. They have to be loaded into the project that you're in, when you come into this routing preferences dialog box. Okay, so the fittings have to be loaded into the project, preloaded. Then when you're in this dialog box, you'll be able to access those fittings through these pull-down menus for each fitting type. Okay, and the fittings obviously are inside of the families. They are set to what type of fitting they are, whether they're an elbow, transition, union, etc. So these pull-down menus are only going to be looking for elbow type fittings here or transition type fittings. Okay, so let's work our way through. So I'll click on here and we'll leave the preferred junction type as T. It can be tap or T, but I'll leave it for T as T for the time being. I'll click on threaded for the rest of these. So I'll pick all the threaded type ones. Okay, so just pick up the rest of those threaded ones. Union. I'll just, for the moment, leave flange and cap as none. I'll click OK to that, and then we can test and see if this pipe type that we've created actually works. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the Systems tab and I'll click on Pipe, and I'll click FP Steel Threaded. That's the pipe type that I just created there. I'll click on that, and I'll just start drawing. Maybe start from a bigger size and work my way down and see if it is actually working. So I can. And I've got my offset set there to 2700, so it's visible in this view. Okay, so it looks like it's working so far. If I reduce that down to 100, let's see if the transition is going to work for me, and it looks like it's working quite well. Okay, I can rise up, let's say 4 meters, and draw a straight segment at 4 meters. As you can see, it's put in a riser pipe there. I can interrogate the 3D view quickly, just to see that that is actually working. So it has actually put a riser part in there. Okay. All right. So go back out of that. So that's just a little bit of the basics about setting up a pipe type for those of you that are new to setting up and working with pipe types. But for those of you that are a bit more advanced and already know how to set up pipe types, here's just a couple of tips that you might not be aware of. If I just edit that pipe type again and go back into the routing preferences, okay, can you see how if I click into these cells, I get these little buttons on the left-hand side here. I can actually add an additional row here, okay? And I can actually do that for each cell, so for the fittings as well, okay? So what this means is that you can effectively, in the one pipe type, you can set your size ranges for different materials, for example, and use different elbows. So, for example, if you're using a smaller, at a smaller diameter, say 15 diameter, you might have a different elbow than what is at a bigger diameter. So you can set those size ranges, okay? And I'll show you an example of that later on in this webinar of some pipe types that we have in the BIM MEP Oz template that have that functionality working with the size ranges in there. But just be aware that you can actually add additional rows here, so you can have effectively, or remove for that matter, but you can effectively have potentially even 3 types of fittings, different fittings in here, okay? And then you can specify which fitting you want to use for which size. So instead of saying all, you can say right between the diameter of 8 and let's say 32. I can use that type of fit of elbow, and then from 32 up, I can use a different type. Okay, maybe not the PVC, but maybe if you had another applicable, steel. Fitting in here, elbow in here, okay? But just be aware that that's something that you can actually use, and actually it helps you, the benefits of that is that it helps you to not have to change pipe types when you're routing or modelling in your project. So you might have in the past set up separate pipe types for a smaller diameter range, and then a larger range, or a medium range and a larger range, and you have to continuously flick through those pipe types to actually route your pipe run, whereas this way sort of effectively lets you use the one pipe type, and you just change the diameters as you go, and the settings in the background will take care of what material is actually being worked there. So I'll have a better example of that in a bit more detail a little bit later, where we can have a look at some of the BIM MEP Oz pipe types. Okay. All right. Let me just make sure that we're still on here. Yep, okay, so it looks like it's working well. All right. So the next thing I wanted to show you was just a little bit about the automatic pipe layout tool for those of you who are not aware of it. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out in this floor plan. So you'll notice that I've actually got some sprinkler heads already laid out here in this building, and I've got a little pump serving as my piece of equipment that's feeding these sprinklers. That just as a base example. What I'm going to do here is I'm also going to open up a 3D view, and then I'm going to tile those views so that you can see a bit better what's going on as I use this tool. Okay, what I'll do is I'll get rid of those pipe types there on the edge so we don't get confused. But this effectively here, what I've done here is a good way of working, to be honest, especially with fire and fire pipe layouts. A good way is to actually not only have your floor plan view open, but have a 3D view open, and for that matter, even if you've got a section view, you might have that open as well. Tile them out like this, and then as you work, you'll see as I work through this demonstration that you'll actually see it routing in a 3D view, and you can actually see what's going on. It allows you to kind of really see what's happening and making sure that elements are placing where you would expect them to, especially on an elevation side of things as well, that things are not sitting on the floor or too low, for example. Okay. Revit works quite well these days with dual screens as well, which I'm sure most of you out there use at least dual screens these days. But you can dock these the project browser and the properties on the second screen. You can have quite a lot of screen space to actually have multiple windows open like this. Okay, so it works quite well. So let's have a quick look at setting up this automatic layout system. One thing I just want to show you back in the settings before I do that is if we come back up to the conversion, so back into that mechanical settings dialog box under pipe settings conversion, you can see here you can set some defaults here as to what's going to be used in the automatic layout tool. So what we can do is we can actually set the system here. So I can say for fire protection wet, what do I want? What type of pipe do I want to use for the main and for the branch, and what do I want the default offset of those pipes to be from the level that I would be currently working on? So I can actually set this here. Okay, so I'll leave these as they are, but just keep in mind this is going to come into play in a sec when we look at the settings in this automatic tool. Okay, so you can reset these to be whatever default you want. Okay, so just remember 2700. I'll click OK to that. Come out. What I'm going to do is have a look at this automatic layout tool now. So let's click on a sprinkler. And you can see up on my contextual ribbon, I get the piping layout. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that to generate a system. It's going to ask me what system type do I want to choose. I'm going to pick fire protection wet, and in fact the only choice I've got there is fire protection wet. The reason for that is that there is actually a connector inside of these, a pipe connector inside of these sprinkler fittings, sprinkler families, and that connector is configured to be specifically a fire protection wet for the system type. So that's why I've only got choice of fire protection wet there. If you're using this tool for other, even other disciplines or even other pipe tops here, if you see on this pull down list you've got access to a whole variety of system types there, that will mean that the connector on the family that you've selected has got it set to global rather than a specific system on its own. And then you can pick whichever one you want at that point in time. Okay, so I'm going to pick fire protection wet. I'll just leave the name as fire protection wet 1. And I'm also going to click on this open in system editor there. Tick that on and click OK. Alright, what that's done is it's automatically put me into the system editor mode, and you can see it's grayed everything else out in this plan view, or in my model view here, and the only thing that is active is this sprinkler here. Okay, so what I can do is make sure that this add to system is selected, and I can go ahead and I can either select them individually, all the other sprinkler heads, to add to the system, or I can actually do a window around. And Revit is smart enough to know that it's looking for sprinklers in this mode because it knows that I'm creating a fire protection system here, so it's looking for sprinklers and pieces of equipment and whatnot. The other thing I want to add here is I want to select the equipment, and I want to add the pump down here. Okay, and you can see in the 3D view that things are changing, things are turning red as I select these elements. If I click on finish the system there now, you can see that everything has turned red that I selected. So the sprinkler heads and the pump itself. Okay. So why have they turned red? Okay. Let's have a bit of a look at that. If I go into my visibility graphics, you'll notice that there are a couple of filters here, but there's no filters here turning anything red or specifically saying about fire pipes. Okay, so where is that red color coming from? That red color is actually coming from the actual pipe system itself. Okay, so if I click down into pipe systems here on the project browser, and I double click on fire protection wet, which is what I assigned to this system when I set it up, you can see that we've got graphic overrides here in the type properties of this actual system. And if I edit that, you can see that that is actually set to red. So that is where that red color is coming from. So if you ever in a situation where you're not sure why things are turning colors and you've checked your visibility graphics and there's no override filters or anything like that, come in and actually check your top level system settings and overrides, because there may be some graphic overrides set in here, okay? And that could be what's changing your things colors, okay? I'll click OK to that. What I want to do now is let's have a quick look at the Generate Layout tool, just for those of you who have not used it before. Look, this tool can be useful. It can sometimes be a bit of a headache if it's depending on what sort of scenario you're using. But look, it can be quite useful, even if only just to start setting you up with a main run, and then you can connect the branches up. But I particularly find this a useful tool for fire sprinkler layout, especially. Some of the other disciplines, the auto layout tool for ducts, air systems and other systems, it can be a bit cumbersome. But for sprinkler systems, it actually does work quite well rather than you manually drawing out all these pipe types. At least it puts them in, and you can still manipulate them later and change them around, but I find that to be a lot quicker than actually drawing them all from scratch. So just keep it in mind. Okay, so what it's done is it's put me into this automatic generate layout mode. We can see my 3D view that's giving me a bit of a sketch of what I'm going to get, okay? But what we can do before we say yes, there are a few things that we can actually change. So what I can actually do is I can flick through some of the options here, which I'm sure you've probably seen before. You see how that's changing the options that I've got there of how the layout is going to be routed. But I'll leave it on 1 of 6 there, and what I really want to show you here is in the settings, okay? This is where those conversion settings come into play that we were looking at just a second ago, all right? So you can see we've got the main and the branch that are set to the system type, and they're set to these default settings here, okay? So that's where that 2700 was that we were looking at before, okay? So this is whatever you've got in your mechanical settings is what it will default to. So when you're in this automatic layout tool, there's nothing stopping you from coming into these settings and actually changing them here before you actually go out of the tool. So I might want to change that to 3 meters for both the main and the branch. Okay, I can also, if I want, I'm going to leave it, but if I wanted to, I could also change the pipe type here as well that it's going to use when it generates these pipes. Okay, but I'll leave it as the carbon steel threaded for now. So I'll leave that both at 3 meters for both the main and the branch, and I'll click OK. And if you notice there, you can see that they just raised up there a bit. Okay, so I'll do that again. So I'll cancel that. So I'll click in here, I'll say, click on the fire sprinkler, generate layout, leave it on option 1. So notice that the sprinkler heads here are sitting at that particular level with the straights not so, or with the drops I should say, not so long. And if I change that now again to 3 meters, and you'll see that it'll raise up once I click OK. You watch here. So it's actually modeling or sketching this out as I change the settings, okay? So this is a live representation of what we're going to get, okay? The last thing I wanted to quickly just show you here was the way that you can actually, you don't have to always go with these actual specific options that it gives you. You do have an option to actually edit the layout whilst you're still in this sketch mode. So if I click on Edit Layout here, I can actually grab my main pipe run, and I can actually drag it across. So let's say I wanted to grab it and move it, say, to this corridor, potentially, as close as I can. I am free to do that whilst I'm in this mode, okay? Once I click Finish Layout, it'll think for a second, and it'll generate the pipes. Okay, so a lot quicker than actually drawing them yourselves, potentially, so just keep it in mind. Now obviously this is grossly oversized at the moment. Okay, we're going to have a look at the next step of how we can actually size these pipes, or effectively size them in Revit, but at least the actual segments and the connections are all made. So you can see there's all a connected run now. If I hover over and use my tab key, you can see it's all connected up, and it's in that system. That's in that fire protection wet system. Okay, so quite useful. All right, so let's have a look at pipe sizing now. Actually sizing this pipe. All right. So what I want to do is I want to open up another drawing here that I've got ready. So let me just minimize that, and I'll come here and make sure that I've got this one open here, and I'll open up that floor plan. So it's very similar to the one I had before. It's effectively that same layout. I'm just going to tile those WT on my keyboard there, and it tiles those views. Okay. All right. Okay, so a bit about sizing. I want to just jump back into the PowerPoint here for a sec. Okay, so important thing to note here, if I just jump back, I'll just quickly jump back into Revit here. So the important thing to note here about sizing, okay, with fire sprinklers is that unfortunately Revit will not use the automatic size duct and pipe sizing tool that you get with duct systems and other sort of hydraulic or wet water domestic water pipe systems. Okay, the automatic pipe sizing tool doesn't work with fire systems. Okay, the main reason that the auto size tool doesn't work in Revit, okay, is that the auto pipe sizing tool, it has no way of selecting and calculating which heads are in the highest demand. Okay, so for example, if the system were to try to calculate by liters per second, it would account for every sprinkler head on the system. Okay, so it's going to grossly oversize the system, and so that's the reason why the auto size tool doesn't work. Okay, so having said that though, there are some sort of workflows here that can help you to effectively size these tools. A bit of a combination of a manual and a bit of an auto tool as well. And this is something you can do with the out-of-the-box tools that you've got there. Okay, so you don't need any kind of add-on or API, program here to do this. There are some examples of more advanced tools that some of you may be aware of out there, but this is just a way for those of you that don't have access to those. Okay, you can just use these out-of-the-box tools and workflows to actually achieve this. Okay, so on this pipe system here, I'm going to jump back into the slide. Let's just say I've got a code here that's specifying the following. So the sizes, depending on how many sprinklers it's feeding, for example, these are the pipe sizes that I need to adhere to. Okay, so I'm going to use this as an example. And so in this system I'm going to show you how we can actually size these to the numbers or to the diameters that are specified for the number of sprinklers that are being fed here. Okay, so in this example, in the red box here, I've got 15 sprinkler heads here. So I'm going to have anything over 15 is 150. So I'm going to need to size my model here to 150 up to about this point here, up to this T. From that point, it's feeding 15 sprinklers and above. Okay, so I need 150, and then I'm going to work my way down using these rules to actually specify this. So it's going to be 150 to the 15 sprinkler heads here. Okay, the next segment's going to be 100 because we've got 12 sprinkler heads. The next one's 80, going by those rules because we've got 8 sprinkler heads that's feeding. So that's this segment here. Needs to be 80. The next segment, the last segment up until the T at the end there of the main run is feeding 4 sprinklers, so it's going to have to be 32 diameter. And then on each branch, we're going to have to effectively do 25, 20, and 15 as it's feeding respectively 3 sprinklers, 2 sprinklers, and then 1 sprinkler. Okay. And on the other side, we've got 1 sprinkler, so we've got 15, okay? So let's flick back into Revit. So going by those sizes, okay? What I can do here is, let's just maximize the 3D view here so you can see a bit clearer what I'm doing. Okay, so the method I'm going to do here is, as I said, a bit of a combination of manual and auto. And when I say auto, by that I mean because this pipework is connected, okay, because they're all connected up through all the fittings and to the sprinkler heads themselves, as I resize and alter some of these segments, it's going to put in reducers and fitting pieces to allow for those sizes, but it's going to remain connected. So that's the beauty of having this already set up. You know, it doesn't matter if the pipe sizes are wrong, you can easily change them and it'll all stay connected. So let's see if we can demonstrate that. So as I said in the, or suggested in the slide there, we've got 15 sprinkler heads up to here. So we've got 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15 sprinkler heads. Okay, so up to that point I need to grab my pipe type here, and check or change if I have to that it is actually 150. So I can see that it is actually 150, so that's all good at the moment to that point. Okay. The next segment along here, so this straight piece here, that's feeding 12 sprinkler heads. Okay, so from my rules, 8 to 15 sprinkler heads was 100. Okay, so I need to change this to be 100. So what I'll do is I'll actually grab, holding my control key down here, I'll actually grab that piece as well. And then I'll come up here and I'll change that to 100. Okay, so you can see that things are happening. It's putting in reducers and whatnot, or transition pieces there as we go. Okay, and it actually changed the size there. So let's just make sure I don't scroll down the sizes there. So let's just change it from 100 to 15. Let me change that back to 100. Okay, and then make sure I actually click out of that before I scroll and change the size there. Okay, so that segment there is set to 100. Let's keep moving down. So this segment here has got 8, and so for 8 I need to change it to 80. So again I'm going to select the straight run, and holding my control key down I'm going to select the fitting piece as well, the cross piece. Change that to 80. And then the last segment of the main run here is feeding 4, so I need this one to be 32. So I'm going to grab that, and I'll grab the T piece as well, change that to 32. And starting to, let's just make sure that doesn't scroll again. So let's just do that again. So effectively you've got to make sure that you actually pick out of the, make sure that's not selected while I pan and zoom there. So effectively you can see that at the moment the main bench now is starting to look more like it should, with a reduction happening there with the pipe size. Okay. What I can effectively do now is start working on the branches. Okay. So let's just concentrate on one here. So let's grab this first one here as an example, and we'll say, right, okay, from this point on I'm feeding 3 sprinklers. So 3 sprinklers for this bit here needs to be 25 diameter. So I can grab that and change that to 25. The next bit's feeding 2, so it needs to be 20. So I can select those and change them to 20. And then the last one is straight segment is feeding just the 1 sprinkler, so that's just going to be 15. And I think we should find that is actually, in fact, already 15 diameter, all the way down there to the actual sprinkler head. So that is actually looking good. If I zoom in, you can see that it's actually putting in the pieces there that we need, okay, to connect it up. Now, keep in mind here that you might not necessarily want this to be a T-piece. You might even want to just tap this out of the pipe, okay? In that instance, you would create a tap fitting, and you'd go back into the routing preferences of your pipe here, and instead of having your preferred junction type as T here, you'd change that to tap, okay? And then you'd pick your junction type, which would be one of your tap fittings that you've selected, okay? So just keep in mind that you can do that. In this example, though, we're just using T, so that's why it's putting in these reducer pieces here, okay? So effectively what I can do now is I can actually do this all in one go, so I can use my control key and select all these segments at the same time that are reducing down. So let me just quickly finish this off. So that's going to be 25. Make sure I click out of it. Then I'll select the next piece. Make sure I do that properly. The straight and the T for each of these. Okay, and I'll change that to, it's feeding 2, so it's going to be 20. And then the rest should be fine. Okay. And then the rest there should be fine at sitting at 15 there. Okay. And on this side we should be okay as well because it should be 15. These are only feeding 1. Okay. So effectively, look, a bit of manual manipulation there, but you can see how quick it is because everything stays connected and the routing preferences will put in the fittings that you need as you change and alter sizes. Effectively, that's a way that you can quickly size your pipes when you're laying out a fire network. Okay. All right. The next thing I want to look at here is the actual sprinkler heads themselves, and just give you a bit of information about sprinkler heads and placing of sprinkler heads and how they can help you. Okay. All right, one more tool that I wanted to show here before I go to sprinkler heads. Okay. I just want to quickly show you the Show Disconnects tool. Okay, in case you're not aware of it. So when you're working with pipe systems in Revit, up on the Analyze tab, you've got a few, and you've got this Check Systems panel. You've got a few pipe checking tools here. Okay, these also work for ducts as well and other disciplines, but let's just focus on pipes here at the moment. So you've got these check system tools. Okay, so one of these tools that I wanted to draw your attention to was this one here, Show Disconnects. Okay, if you click on that tool, what you'll get is a little dialog box that will say or ask you, okay, what do you actually want to show the disconnects of? So I'm going to tick on pipes and click OK. What it'll actually do is it'll highlight any, with a little icon, any disconnects in your pipe system. Okay, so not much going on there, which is good. But you can see if I zoom in down here on the pipe, I've got this little icon here. Okay, what it'll do is allow you to click on it and actually tell you what is actually happening or what's wrong. Okay, why there is an error here. Okay, so it's the same as reviewing your errors in Revit. So this will come up as an error in your review warnings if you're familiar with that tool in Revit. But this is just a way that you can specifically zone in on your MEP specific errors. So, and this in this case specifically pipe errors. What it allows you to do is not only get a little message here, but you can actually click in here and expand it, and then you can expand and actually see where the element is and what is happening. So it'll tell me that there's an element, this piece of mechanical equipment has an open connector, and if I click on that, the error message, you can see that it highlights orange there in the model and actually shows me which piece of equipment it actually is. So it's actually this, and it tells me here for that matter as well that it is actually that pump. Okay, so it's telling me that there's an open connection. So if, obviously I've got an open connection here because at the moment I've only got my pipes connected coming out of the pump and feeding those sprinklers. I actually have nothing feeding this pump at the moment. Okay, in the into the inlet. Okay, so that's why I'm getting that that warning. But just wanted to sort of show you and demonstrate that tool for you. Be aware that that is actually quite a good tool. It's quite a good tool also because sometimes you can have quite large pipe networks in sprinkler with sprinkler pipe layouts, and you might be trying to find a disconnect somewhere and it's actually not showing up for you, or it's a bit hard to find. So what you can actually do is, if I actually just grab this and I'll split that tool. So let's just say I'll split that bit of pipe there. I'll delete that, which sometimes can happen, and I'll just drag that across. Okay, and it's just sort of sitting there. Okay, it's not actually connected to the sprinkler. Whereas when I zoom out, no one that jumps in this into this model will be any kind of wiser. They might think, oh, yeah, that's all connected. Okay, looks all connected, but it's actually, in fact, it's got a disconnect here. So another easy example here, but can you imagine if you've got hundreds of these disconnects, or maybe not hundreds, but 10, 20 of these disconnects? This is an easy way to just quickly, all in one go, find where those disconnects are and actually have it highlighted in a view for you. So it's just a good way of checking your system there. So just keep in mind you've got those check system tools there. In a future webinar, we might go into more detail in these check systems. We have other pipe tools here for checking as well, but we'll leave that for a later time. So I'll turn that off. The last thing I wanted to look at here today was just a little bit about the sprinklers themselves, as I mentioned. So let me jump into my third data set here. So I'm going to open up O003. Okay. So I just want to explain a little bit about fire sprinklers, the actual families themselves, and how you can have different hostings and how they kind of work. Okay. So I've got in this example here 2 sprinkler heads. Okay. This one on the left is a pendant, 15mm pendant on a drop, and this one is a upright sprinkler, 15mm. Okay. But there's a couple of differences with these two, and I just want to highlight them now. Okay. So if I click the first one again. Well, you can see in the name firstly that it says hosted, but if I actually edit that family quickly, here's a way that you can check whether your sprinkler heads are actually hosted or not. If I click into the family category and parameters window here and scroll down to the bottom, I can actually see what the actual hosting of this family is. Okay, so if there is a specific label here like face or even specifically ceiling here, for example, you know that that family is actually hosted. Okay. So this example here is actually a face-based family, all right? This cannot be changed, or not easily anyway, okay? So just be aware that if you're creating sprinkler families from scratch and you start from a face-based template, it's not easy to change those over, okay? There are a few tips and tricks out there and workarounds how you can get hosted families to be non-hosted. And I think one of my colleagues, Klaus, did a webinar on that recently, where he's covered some of those tools. But just be aware that it's not easy to do, and so just be aware that just have a think about what you're doing when you're creating these families, whether you want it to be hosted or not. Okay. So this example is hosted. I'll go back into the project. This sprinkler here, if I edit the family, oops, wrong window. Make sure I go into the family category and parameters window there. You can see that I've got nothing specified for the host there. So this is an unhosted family or unhosted sprinkler, this one. Okay, so that's the main difference between the two. So if I click on, I'm in a ceiling plan view here at the moment. Okay, so that's why I can see that ceiling grid. So there's a ceiling here that's got actually tiles specified in it. So we actually can see the grid there. Okay. If I click on that sprinkler that is actually hosted, it actually tells me that what the host is. So it tells me that it's actually hosted to that linked Revit model, arc link model, okay, and there's actually a ceiling in that Revit model, okay. So that's where that's coming from, and it's telling me that the elevation of it is that value as well, okay. Whereas if I select the non-hosted sprinkler, you can see that its host is just that referenced level, okay. That I'm working on. So I'm on level 2 here at the moment in this model. So it's referenced to the level 2, which is called O2 floor level in this model. And it has an offset value of 2385, which takes it up to the ceiling, okay? So both of these sprinklers are sitting on the ceiling, and if I jump into the section that's here, you'll see this. And if I zoom in on these 2 sprinkler heads, okay, so you can see this is that level 2 line there, okay? See level 2 there, okay? And if I come back across, you can see these 2 sprinkler heads here. This one is actually hosted on the ceiling itself. It's the hosted one, and this is the non-hosted one that has that offset of 2385, so that it is actually to the ceiling. Okay. So you can see that there. All right. So back into the floor plan. Okay. Okay, so placing these hosted sprinklers, for example, this time I'm going to say right-click and say create similar, so it gives me exactly the same sprinkler head there. Because this is a hosted sprinkler, I get these options up here on the contextual ribbon. Okay, it's asking me where I want to or how I want to place the sprinkler. So it'll always default to place on vertical face, but I don't want to put it on a vertical face. Obviously, I want to put it on a just on a horizontal face on the ceiling itself. Okay, so I want to make sure that I pick this place on face option, which effectively allows me to place it on any face, a vertical or a horizontal. Okay. So then when I move into the ceiling area itself, you can see that I've got the sprinkler head there. It's about, and it'll place itself there. Okay, so I can place it on the two intersections. At the moment, the base point of this sprinkler head is the center of the sprinkler head, so it'll only let me snap it to the intersection of the ceiling tiles there. But obviously, you're going to want it to be in the center of the tile. So a tip on that is obviously you can use your move tool and move it 300 in both directions. So I know the ceiling tile is 600 by 600. So that's obviously one way that I can actually move this into place. Another way of doing this, or another way to think about this possibly, is that you could actually alter the base point of that sprinkler head. So you could edit the family, come into your floor plan view, and actually create your intersection or your reference planes, which become your origin point here, the intersection of those two. Move the intersection origin point down, let's say 300 away vertically and 300 horizontally, down to here. And then when you place the sprinkler in, your base point will be 300 off, or your sprinkler will be 300 off that base point as you place it in. So that's something to think about. That can have other ramifications on how the sprinkler works, but it can be an effective way if you're annoyed about this always placing at the center of the sprinkler head and you want to be able to place it, offset onto the sprinkler head itself. Okay. All right, so let's have a look at arraying these sprinklers as a last little tip here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create similar here again. I'm going to actually, what I'll do is I'll copy rather than create similar. So I'm going to select that sprinkler. I'm going to copy. This way I can copy it from that intersection, and I'll place it down here inside of my room here. Let's say this one. I'll put it on that one there, and then I'll copy that again, and I'll place that one there. So just to show you how the array tool works, for those of you that don't know, okay, this can be another quite useful tool for setting out the sprinkler heads. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll select both those sprinklers. I'm going to come up to the array tool, and I just have to change a few settings here. Okay, so I'm going to select those two. Up on my modify contextual ribbon here, I've got my array tool, which is located here. Okay, this little icon here. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And once you activate the array tool, you've got a few different ways that you can do array. You've got a few tools. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to leave it as a linear array. Okay, I want to check the group and associate, so just make sure that is actually ticked on, okay, because I want this to actually group itself. I'm going to leave this at 2 for the moment, and I'll show you how we can quickly change that at the moment, and I'm just going to say move to second rather than last, okay. And once those settings are set, what I can actually do is I can actually then use a base point here to say, right, I want to copy these two up from there, and let's say we go 3 tiles up, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, and do it that way. All right. What I might actually do is move that to the next one up here, just so I can demonstrate how we can actually bring this array back. Okay, so I've got an array there, and as I click any of these sprinklers, you can see I get that little box around it which tells me that this is part of an array group. Okay, and also what I get is this little icon to the side here, which allows me to click into it and actually change the number of rows here in this array. Okay, so at the moment I've got 2. Let's say I want to change that to 3, so I can click in there and type 3, hit enter, and it'll array for me another row of sprinklers. Okay, so I've purposely put this so that it's clashing on the wall here, because I want to show you that with this array tool you can quickly bring this back in and keep the spacings, okay, so which can be quite useful. So what I can actually do is, because these are all still grouped in this array, I can effectively just grab just these center ones, these middle row sprinklers here, move them back to the intersection of those there, and you can see it's retained the spacing there, okay, so it's actually moved those back, okay. So that's a way that you can actually use arrays there to control your sprinkler layouts. It can be quite useful. You can then ungroup those if you want to be able. If you just want to do an initial array, and then you want to manipulate your sprinkler heads individually. Just keep in mind you've got to select your sprinkler heads and ungroup there. Okay, so that will break the array effectively. And the last thing I wanted to show you here was just a little bit about dimensions here with sprinkler heads. Okay, dimensions can be quite useful with your sprinkler heads and to control the layouts, specifically the align dimension. And I'll show you what I mean. What I can effectively do is with dimensions is drive and move the sprinkler heads themselves. So maybe I'll put a dimension from the edge of that wall to this sprinkler head, to the next one, and then lastly to that wall there. I'll click to place that dimension run. But what it'll allow me to do now is that these dimensions have a relationship with those sprinkler heads now, so that when I click into or select one of those sprinkler heads, you can see that these dimensions become active. Okay, so what I might want to do is make that, let's say, 1200, and you can see that it'll change the spacing. Okay, so this will be useful for, let's say that this was not a ceiling grid or a tiled ceiling here. Let's say it was a set plaster ceiling, or no ceiling effectively, if these sprinklers are just exposed. Okay, this can be an effective way of doing it. If you don't have that tile grid to kind of go by, you can use the dimensions here to easily let you sort of space these out. Okay, so put your dimensions on, and then you can manipulate and change the spacings of these. And also, obviously, it comes into depending on what the code is and what your spacing requirements are. Obviously, for sprinklers from walls and between each other and whatnot, and around columns. So that can be an effective way that you can effectively do that. And you can have dimensions going up that way as well. Okay. So that's about it for the workflows in here. I hope you've found that useful for the workflows. I've just got a couple more slides and a few things I just want to bring your attention to, namely some of the BIM MEP Oz features that we have. Okay, so if you're not aware, we have, as I mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, a Revit template and Revit content through the BIM MEP Oz initiative that we have created, that A2K has created, and has made available by subscription to users. So you can subscribe in and you can jump onto the website and download that content. But I just wanted to bring your attention to some of the specific fire content that's available at the moment in the BIM MEP Oz template. It is being added to all the time, as I said, but at the moment we currently have, just so you're aware, the Victolic fire protection pipe type available inside of that Revit template. So it also includes the Victolic couplings inside of the routing preferences there. So I can quickly show you that. If we jump to, and I'm just about short of time here, but I'll just quickly, won't take long. Let me just jump into that one there. Okay, so these are all of the pipe types that we've got in the BIM MEP Oz template. But if I zoom in on this one here, this is the Victolic fire protection one. Okay, so it's got its sizes already set as per the sizes that we were looking at earlier in the webinar. And if I edit the routing preferences here, okay, you can see that we've got you know, the Victolic, standard Victolic fittings here for the elbows, and we've got the couplings and that. Okay, so they come from an FP and an IPS range depending on what you're working with. Okay, so those couplings are actually in there, and those routing preferences actually work. Okay, so if I create similar on that, it'll actually, as I model out, okay, it'll place in those fittings with the couplings as I go. Okay. If I jump into the 3D view there, okay, you can see it's got the couplings on there. Okay, so that works quite well. So I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but just be aware that we've got these services already predefined for you set up in the BIM MEP Oz template. The last thing I wanted to show you there in the BIM MEP Oz template is, I mentioned earlier about adding multiple layers to your pipe routing preferences. This pipe type here in the BIM MEP Oz template, this IPS AGS, is an example of that. Okay, so if I click into the routing preferences there, you can see that we've got multiple pipe segments and fittings specified for the different size ranges. So this pipe type can effectively be sized and used with those different size ranges, and it'll substitute those the different materials and the different elbows and the different reducers, etc. As you work. So they've got three levels there. Okay. All right, and if you're interested in accessing, if any of you are interested in accessing this BIM MEP Oz content, you can get some more information from the website. So I'll open up just a quick new window there and I'll browse to the website, which is actually thinkbimmepoz.com.au. Okay, here you can browse not only to and see the Revit templates that are available for download, okay, which houses those pipes that we were just looking at, amongst other things. It has all disciplines, ducts, conduits, cable trays. It has generic content in there as well. But from this website and that you subscribe to as well, you've also got the manufacturer-specific content that we've created for the MEP industry in Australia. Okay, so an example here, we've got all of these sort of manufacturers, but if we come down to, let's say, Victolic, okay, you can see that we've got a whole lot of the Victolic range of pipe types and fittings. Okay, we've also got a range of Grundfos pumps. Okay, so these are all, each individual item here in this catalogue is a Revit family. So you click on them, you log in, you click on and you can download them either individually or all in one go. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, and so if you want more information on that, just get in touch with us. Okay, and I'll have some contact details at the end here. And the last slide that I just wanted to show you, just to recap, was some of the tips and tricks that we went through there. Just keep in mind that Revit will not automatically size the fire pipe system, so that auto pipe duct and pipe size tool doesn't work, unfortunately, with the fire pipe systems. Okay, but we went through some effective ways of how you could size those. A non-hosted sprinkler family can be useful. Okay, so I was in that demonstration was using the hosted face-based sprinkler and posting it on the ceiling. But for those times when you don't have a ceiling, you can just use a non-hosted sprinkler, and like that other example in there, you can just place it and actually just give it an offset, so it can be floating effectively. So when there's no ceiling, or even if it's exposed, so it's not, maybe the reason is not that the architect hasn't provided you with a ceiling in the model, but the area of that building just might have no ceiling at all, it might be exposed. So that's where you would potentially want to use a non-hosted family. It can have more flexibility for you. Keep in mind that you can add more than one pipe segment and fitting inside the pipe routing preferences. So just keep that in mind. We demonstrated that. Sprinkler base points can be altered in the family for ease of placement, so that can be another way that you can effectively change that. And the array tool is helpful for controlling the sprinkler head layout. Okay, in fact, the array and the align tool is quite useful as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Alrighty, so we're running out of time here. I'll just check and see if we had any questions there. Let's just see. Looks like there's a few. Okay. So just bear with me here. I'll just see if I can. So there's one here. Can you set a maximum number of sprinklers to use for pipe sizings so it acts like a max flow rate limit? Unfortunately, no, not with the out-of-the-box tools there. There's no way of setting a maximum sprinkler head. It'd be nice in that order, in that conversions tool that they added a bit there in that, but at the moment that's not possible, unfortunately. Okay, so there's a question here, clash detection. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that question might be, but I assume that you mean can they be clash detected? So yes, these pipe types can definitely be clash detected. They are 3D geometry, so they can be taken, well, they can be clashed in Revit itself using the Revit out-of-the-box clash tool, but they can also be taken into programs like Navisworks, where you're probably familiar with and seeing clash detection runs there. They can be exported into a Navisworks model and clashed against other services and other disciplines, absolutely. So the question here, can I get a copy of this webinar? Absolutely. This webinar is being recorded and it will be up on the YouTube, on our A2K Technologies YouTube channel. It'll also be on our website in our webinar vault as well, okay? So I can quickly show you that, where that is in a sec. And the question is, did you say if you are an A2K subscriber, you can get the templates for BIM MEPs, or is this a separate subscription? So yeah, just a bit of, just to clarify that, it is a separate subscription. So if you are an A2K subscriber, you don't have access to the BIM MEPs tools. The BIM MEPs tools are a separate subscription on their own. Okay. So if you want more information and pricing about that, just get in touch with us. And as I said, we'll have the contact details at the end. You can see some of the details down the bottom here, but I'll go over those. But yeah, you've got to have a separate subscription for the BIM MEPs, and you get a 12-month access to the website where you can download the template and the fire pipes, etc., and that manufacturer content. Okay, for other disciplines as well. What is the best solution for displaying sprinklers on sloping ceilings or pipes? Again, look, yeah, that's a common question, that one, not only for sprinklers, but for all disciplines in Revit. You know, lights, even air grills. There is a bit of an issue still to this day about sloped ceilings, okay? Because when you place an element on a sloped ceiling, it can host okay, but in a floor plan view, you won't see your symbology anymore. You'll see the 3D geometry in the skewed form that it is looking at it on an angle in that floor plan view. So there's still, I'm not aware of there being a good solution for that to this date. Some people will use model lines in their family rather than detail lines, so that those model lines become visible in that floor plan view when that element is sloped, and then those model lines become the symbology. So I've seen it done that way, but that can be a bit messy. That's really the only kind of way that you can do it still to this day. There's no good tool at the moment for those sloped ceilings, unfortunately. All right, so we might leave it there. We're a bit over time there, so apologies for that, but hopefully that's been good for you guys. So as I said, if you want to get in touch with us, here's the email, solutions@A2Ktechnologies.com.au. And the website there is www.A2Ktechnologies.com.au, and this webinar will be available online on our A2K website, on that website, and also available on the YouTube channel. If you type in A2K Technologies in YouTube, you go to our channel there, and you can see a webinar playlist there. All right, so thanks very much for attending today, guys, and all the best, and we'll talk to you soon.